Hi everyone, it's Evelyn, and in this week's video we're going to do a few things. First, we're going to go over how I pinch my dahlias so that they get a bushier plant. Then we're going to go over my favorite type of blooming schedule, and then I'll give you an update on the seedlings. Now, we're going to start with the dahlias, but before I get to how I pinch them, I'm going to show you, because they're all at different stages of growth, so I'm going to show you what happens during the various different stages. Now, on my dahlia video that I did a few weeks ago, I showed how I unpacked them from winter storage and got them going. And what happens then is as they start get going, as you can see in this one, it's just got a little sprout on the top of the dahlia, but I have now filled up the soil to the base of that sprout because this is a single tuber. If it was two tubers that were still stuck together, I would still keep the soil level a little lower, hoping that another sprout would show up on the other tuber so I could divide them. But in this case, it probably was just a single, or I already divided it, so now I can get the soil level up to the top of the tuber. And as it grows, I will fill it in with more soil. The reason I do it that way is because the green sprout is able to synthesize from the grow lights and grow a little bit quicker than if it was just it was full 6 inches underground. It would have to push its way through the soil, so that's a slower growth pattern at that point. Then, as the seedling grows, like in this case, what I will do is all the lower petal leaves, I will pinch off. You can't see those two little first ones, but you can see here I'm going to pinch off this next batch of leaves on here just with my fingernail, and then I'll leave that for 24 hours to heal, and then I will raise the soil level up to just below that next 2 pairs of leaves. I also like to manhandle it a bit while I do this. I'm not being careful because that creates a stronger plant. Once I've pinched off the leaves and the plant has grown taller and I'm able to get the soil up to the soil surface, this is not 6 inches. The line on the stick is 6 inches. So as you can see, that bottom pair of leaves will still be below the soil surface. So I'm going to pluck those off just with my fingernail and leave those to continue growing on a bit. I wait till there's a certain amount of leaf above it before I pluck off the lower leaves. Then you can see this is where leaves have been plucked off here, and also a pair down here. This one is now definitely 6 inches, well above the 6-inch soil level. So what I'm going to do, this is where I pinch my dahlias. These 2 lower leaves are going to stay, but I'm going to pinch off that whole centerpiece. And what that's going to do is cause this to branch out twice. Now, there's 2 reasons to do that. 1, so I get a bigger plant in the garden, but 2, this one's obviously growing quite a bit quicker than the others, and it's going to hit my LED lights before it's time to start hardening them off outside, which I do mid-April. So this keeps the plant lower. If the 2 new sprouts keep growing and it's still growing too quickly, I will pinch those and it'll get even bushier. But a lot of people do their pinching once they're in the, they plant their tubers in the garden. Once it grows up after their last frost, once it grows enough out of the garden to pinch it, they do it then. Well, you're getting so much later flowers that way. It's only mid-March and I've already pinched it. So when it goes in the garden, it's ready to just take off. So that's basically how I do the pinching. Pretty simple, pretty quick. You could, if you wanted to, stick this in a little bit of soil and root it, but I don't. This is AC Loomis, which I have quite a few of. I don't need any more of these. I have something like 30 of them growing, so it would be just a waste of time for me to do that. Now, the other thing that I did, is I didn't have enough of my milk and fruit containers to cut into these pots. So I was having to use smaller ones, but I've since been able to cut down some new ones. punch my holes in the bottom of it so I can use this new pot to put this one in, because this is not a lot of soil for this plant. So, and this clearly will have more soil in here. So what I will do is I will simply, I wanted to do this on the camera so you could see how much root is already on here. It's not root bound, but it's got quite a bit of root on there. And I have to move these plants because they're sitting on top of the lid, on top of the container that I put some soil into. I'll just pull this in front of me here. Take the lid of my soil container. I'm going to put just a little bit more soil in the bottom of this. Not much. Just a very, very thin amount. Plop that in there. Push all the soil down. And then add some more soil to it. You can see I'm banging my plants around because that helps harden them off. I am not gentle with my plants. I want them to be very tough when they go in the garden. And the best way for them to get tough is for me not to be gentle with them in the original growing process. So this is now potted up into a pot. I'm going to put the lid back on this box. And before I forget, I'm going to take, see, this is another AC Loomis. I'm going to take the label off this pot, which is just with painter's tape, and stick it on this bigger pot. There. I don't have any water in here. I'll water it after the video. So that's that. All ready to grow into its bigger size container. And these size containers are big enough. I've done this for a few years now, so I know that they do quite fine in that size container until it's time to put them up. They're quite root bound. The roots actually will come out of the bottom of the pot. I don't see any roots coming out of the bottom of that one. Okay, here. See, this one that I got in here, you can see that there's roots coming out the bottom. Basically, they're just getting air pruned. So that is how I prune my dahlias. Or pinch my dahlias. Pretty straightforward. I've got all the different steps. All the steps make for a nice, I mean, you look at this one that I just pinched, this stem is getting pretty stiff. It's being manhandled through all my processes, even watering, that it's getting to be a pretty tough plant, even though it's in the seed room. So we've got the dahlias pinched. Pretty straightforward way of doing that. All I use is a stick with a 6-inch mark to know which ones are ready to start the pinching. Now let's go on to the bloom schedule, because as you saw last week when I did the March garden tour, I did have the crocuses blooming already. There's a lot more blooming than there were then, and nothing else yet, but it's the perfect time to start working on my blooming schedule. So my blooming schedule, I just do on 11 by 17 inch graph paper, which you can get at Staples. And I just have it clipped onto a piece of coroplast so that it has a nice, that's 11 inches wide and long enough so that I can put two pieces of paper together, so it's got a good size to it. And what I like to do is, I'm going to just move you over sideways here so you can see. I do 4 squares for each month. So first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter of January, and then the same for February. And that takes me pretty much all the way across the 11-inch width of this graph paper. Then down this side, and I have from before, the plants as they start to bloom. So large crocuses started to bloom beginning of March. This year, I made a little pen line there. You can see that I'm actually a week behind, but that makes sense because we've had a cold late winter. What I'm going to do different for this year when I do it is I'm going to leave between March and April, I'm going to leave some gaps. So as I add new flowers, I can change that up, add them in. The other thing that I'm doing different is only because I don't have them anymore. I had a lot of colored felt pens at this time, and I like to do my blooming schedules with colored felt pens so I can see what color's blooming. So you can see the large crocus is a purple because I used a purple felt pen. I'll go a little closer, you can see it a little bit better. What I'm going to do now, instead of that, because I have them, I'm going to use pencil crayons. Interesting fact, I've had these pencil crayons since I was a teenager. I don't use them that often. I don't like pencil crayons, but they're going to be perfect for this because I got so many different colors that I can be a bit more accurate as to what color is blooming. So I just think that's kind of, it's fun, but it's also interesting because I can look at the schedule and I can say in March, I have 2 blue things and 1 purple thing blooming. So if I wanted to add, if I was selling flowers in March, which I'm not, and I think, well, I need to have some pink flowers or some white flowers as well, that's sort of a notation that I need to add that for the following year, and so forth down the line for the rest of the year. Now, when I was doing this blooming schedule, the last things that bloomed started blooming at the beginning of August and finished. Where is this? Where is this line? Halfway through September. I actually must have been when I stopped keeping track, because that's not true, because I've got my dahlias on here. My dahlias go to anywhere from mid-October right up to December 1st, depending on when the first killing frost is. Because, yeah, I actually had dahlias blooming right up until December 1st one year. It's not necessarily true to my whole area. I have a slightly warmer late fall ecoclimate right here on my property, while everybody else's around me that has had the frost kill off their dahlias weeks before, mine are still blooming. I did last year when I started thinking of it, I did write down the names of things and then write down when they started and when they finished. But I gotta tell you, I find this really hard to look at. I find this really easy to look at. Now, I know some people do it on the computer, but I'm in my seed room when I'm figuring out a lot of the stuff, and I don't like to leave my computer in here because the humidity can get high. Like when I do my videos, if I have my computer in here, I don't today, usually I do, but it's been a hectic week, so I have not actually planned this video out in advance. Before I bring my computer down here, I'll leave the door to the seed room open for an hour just so that the humidity will get out of here, and not worry about how it affects any electronic equipment. But I can leave my seed schedule in here because it's not affected by the humidity. So I like having a hard copy. And you cannot do, and basically that's an 11-inch by 11-inch square right now. You can't print an 11-inch by 11-inch square out on your computer. So while I know a lot of people love doing everything on their computer, I like having hand copies of a lot of things, because I can take them into the garden, not worry about them getting dirty. I can just, if it's small enough, I can reprint on my computer. You know, for instance, my garden plan is actually on my computer, but I print it out and keep it on a clipboard because I can take it out into the garden and remind myself about things and not worry about it getting dirty or wet. If it gets wet, I can just print another one out. If it gets dirty, yeah, it doesn't matter. Same as the front garden, which I can't do on my computer because it's too big with all my dahlias that will be going in there. Nothing's labeled yet because I haven't planted them yet. But I can take this out into the garden and not worry about it getting dirty. And I can actually flip this page back and refer to last year's and the year before. And the year before, and the year before. Oh, this is interesting. Look how much smaller my dahlia garden was in the first year versus this year. It's grown a bit. But yeah, I've been selling dahlia flowers in my flower wagon for 5 years. So this is my fifth year flower farming. But the first 2 years, were only dinner plate dahlias, and they did really, really well. I mean, I couldn't believe how just having dinner plate dahlias, no bouquets, just dinner plate dahlias, how well they did. So the third year, I added in, I wanted to get some earlier, I was going to say crops, but that has more to do with food. I wanted to get in some earlier flowers. So that's when I started doing crocuses and daffodils. And they did really well too. But then what happened was I had this big dead spot between the tulips and daffodils to the dahlias, because the tulips and daffodils were finished mid-May, and my dahlias didn't start blooming until, the first one started blooming around mid-July, maybe a little later, depending on the year. So then the following year, I added in sweet peas and sunflowers. And then I figured, well, that just wasn't really enough of a holdover between the bulbs, early spring bulbs, and the dahlias. So the following year, which was last year, now does that make this my 6th year? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this is going to be my 6th year. Anyway, so the following year was the first year I converted the food garden, which had lots of flowers in it, for pollination, into a flower garden for selling flowers, which has food in it for eating. So it's just, it's always had food and flowers. It's just the emphasis before was on food. The emphasis now is on the flowers. And I've reduced the food because I really only want to grow, for now, the fruits and vegetables that we eat a lot of. The rest, we can just buy at the supermarket or we get from friends, because lots of people have food gardens and I can give them flowers, they can give me vegetables. Anyway, so that's how the progression of my flower farm has kind of gone. And I have no idea how I started this sort of conversation. But, oh, because I said I only started with the dahlias, and now it's more of a full-fledged flower farm. Also, the first, I guess, 4 years, it was just the flower wagon at the road. And then last year, I also started doing our farmer's market, which I'll do again this year. But at the farmer's market, because I only have so many flowers that I can sell as bouquets, so I don't have enough to sell everything that I need to sell at my flower wagon. And that is my mainstay. I don't want to short the flower wagon for the farmer's market. So the farmer's market will get the extra. But last year I only had probably enough extra to do about 8 to 10 bouquets a week. But that doesn't matter. I'm also an artist, so I sell my art cards, art magnets, art prints, etc. And that is sort of supplements the flower wagon. I'll pop a few pictures of some of the work that I've done if you haven't seen it, that I will then take down to the farmer's market. In fact, so I did do some videos last year just for friends and family, so they like to see what I was doing. It wasn't really specifically for an unknown audience such as yourselves that I've never met before. Those ones were basically just for friends and family. But anyway, that's that. Now let's get on to the updates on the seeds. Oh, before I go and take you over to see them, I'm going to get out my seed schedule here and tell you the notes that I've got so far. Now, you saw last week that I was hardening off my stock, my nigella, my lettuce, and my bachelor buttons. Those are all planted outside as of yesterday. I got them all in the ground yesterday. I didn't get the snapdragons in the ground, but they're okay. They're still pretty small. They don't need to go on the ground, but they're still in the front of our garage where we have the plexiglass doors, so that act like a greenhouse. So they're doing fine out there. Now, the ranunculus that I bought, I remember discussing with you in a past video that they were not popping up as fast as the ones that I had dug up from last year. So the ones that I dug up and stored over the winter from last year, I had 75 of the corms of them. 75 out of 75, that's what I got. So I've got 75 growing out in the garden of the 75 that I dug up. Of the ones that I bought, 5 out of 5 of the white, which is good, excellent, just they took a while. But only 2 out of 5 of the marshmallow, which are the pink ones. Now, I think what happened is we did get lots of cold spells later on in the February. So, when the ranunculus were shipped to the garden center here, I'm guessing they may have gotten a bit of a freeze on the truck, and because a couple of them just turned to mush. And to me, that's a sign, not of overwatering, because clearly I don't overwater my ranunculus if I got 75 out of 75 of the ones that I dug up, and 5 out of 5 of the white that I bought. I'm guessing that the mush is from freezing and thawing, because that's what will happen in a freeze and thaw with plants, is you'll just get mush. So that's unfortunate, but that's just, what can you do? The same thing happened last year. All the ones that I bought, there was a lot of mushy ones, and again, we had some really late cold spells, and I'm pretty sure it happened on the truck, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. So then I planted cosmos, and each package, each of the 3 types of full-headed cosmos that I planted, all said that they had approximately 25 seeds in them, so I planted 3 different kinds. So the pink ones, I only got 16 out of the package that was supposed to have approximately 25. And 16 of those 16 have sprouted. So, you know, that's okay. I've got 16 out of 16. Of the white ones that only had 11, I thought it was 10, but it was actually 11, bad count. Of the 11 seeds that I had in a package that was supposed to have approximately 25, 11 have sprouted. So that's good. Now, I was really happy that the bicolor ones that I had purchased that were supposed to have 25 in the package actually had 33 in the package. So I figured it still didn't make up for the low numbers in the other ones, but it was certainly better because it had 8 more than the average of 25. Except that of those 33, only 19 have come up. So in the long run, they're not doing better, because the sprouting ratio on them is so much lower. So I end up with 16 pink, 12 white, and 19 bicolor. So what can you do? That's disappointing. And I can't plant anymore because I only bought the 3 packages, expecting to have 75 plus seeds to plant. Because usually when they say approximately, it's over, not under. And instead of having 75 to plant out, I only have 19, 29, 31, 41, 48. So that's going to be a little disappointing. But, you know, you just roll with the flow and stuff like that. So then I also did a second sowing of marigolds. I planted 18, of which as of now 14 are up. And you'll be able to see the difference between my first planting and my second planting in size. The first planting of the marigolds I did them in really small cells, and then I bumped them up because they were drying out all the time, which I felt was really holding them up. This time around, the bigger cells that I'm putting them in seems to be much better. I also planted my favorite tomato, which is Health Kick tomato. And I did 5 yogurt containers like this, with holes drilled in the bottom, and only about an inch of soil, because as they grow, I'll fill it in with the soil so that they will get a much bigger root mass as the roots come out through the stem, because tomatoes will put roots out all through their stem. So in those 5 containers, I put 2 seeds in each. And of course, they all came up. So I have 10 out of 10 tomatoes growing in them. So I will probably split them up sometime between now and next week and have 10 containers of tomatoes instead of 5. So that is the update on my seedlings as far as my notes go. So I'll just take you over and show you what I got. Now I'm going to take you off of selfie mode again and put you over to the other mode so it's easier for me to see what you're. Okay, so here we are. As you can see, a lot more of my dahlias are up. So I've arranged them so that the taller ones are at the back, so it's easier to see the lower ones and pinch the leaves, etc. Because if I had a lot of the tall ones in the back, I'd have to reach over top of them. But yeah, you can see there's a lot more growth happening on the dahlias since the last time I showed them to you. Not all, because you can see, you know, in this particular, I have 2 trays of La Luna. This one has quite a few that are up bigger. Oh, these are just 2 extras here. It's Kelvin Floodlight that's in the rest of this. They're a lot lower. Some just take longer to grow. That's all there is to it. So down here on the second shelf, we have the ranunculus that I bought. So they've been hardening off. I left them in here so you could see them. They'll be getting planted out probably by next weekend. Here's a fun thing. It's looking a little sad because I just transplanted it. This lettuce plant self-seeded itself in one of my dahlia pots. So I dug it up and potted it up just before this video. I should have left it in the dahlia pot so you could see it, but that's from a seed from... I didn't leave any lettuce plants to flower last year, so that's a seed from the previous year. This container's got 2 nigellas that I somehow missed when I was planting them out, so those will be going out soon because they're hardened off enough. Here are my cosmos. They, as per typical, get a little leggier than all of the other flower seedlings. Now what's interesting about cosmos is you can plant them up to here when you pot them up or plant them out. For me it'll be planting out, I'm not potting them up. But you don't want to do that until they get their first true leaves, which is what these are, these more feathery looking ones. These solid ones are just the seedling leaves. So you wait until they get their true leaves before you pot them up. Here is my second planting of ranunculus. Sorry, French, African marigolds, the creamy white ones. And this is the first planting of them. So you can see there is more size, height, and leaves to the first planting than the second planting, but they're not that far off behind, so that's good. Down in this shelf, you can see, can you see that in there? Yeah, so there's my 1 yogurt pot with 2 tomatoes in there. So I've got the 5 containers all drilled at the bottom, and before next week these will be divided and potted up and filled up with a little bit more soil. So that's the update on the seedlings in this room. Because as I said, I was able to get most of the other ones planted out. Oops, take you off of this. So, for some reason, this week, when I'm taking you off of selfie mode and putting you on the other side of my phone and vice versa, I keep hitting the turn off button for the video, so this is actually, I'm having to splice the 3 videos together, but that's okay. It doesn't really make much difference. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and if you have any comments, absolutely leave them in the comment section below. I love hearing from you. Until next week, bye.